It's strange how certain places cling to your memory, no matter how long you've been away. Pine Ridge was like that for me. Even after years abroad, I could still picture those quiet summer mornings. Barefoot on the old dock, fishing rod dangling lazily over the water, my grandfather beside me, softly whistling jazz as the mist lifted off the lake. Life was simple back then. We didn't have smartphones or cable, just an old radio with a crooked antenna and a well-worn deck of cards. The lake wasn't something anyone claimed to own. It was just there, like the sky or the breeze, woven into everyday life, not carved into parcels. When I came back after 5 years overseas, I hoped to feel that same stillness again. I wasn't expecting everything to be unchanged, but I wasn't prepared for how unrecognizable it had become. The lake still shimmered, and the pines stood proud as ever, but the shoreline had been overtaken. Big homes, trimmed hedges, security gates. That old winding road we used to bike down? Now it was Pine Ridge Estates Drive, paved and lined with surveillance cameras and official-looking signs. The biggest shock of all was the HOA. Back in the day, nobody would have dreamed of needing something like that. But now, it ruled the area like a miniature government. I was standing on my porch, soaking in the lake view when I first saw her, Karen Whitmore, marching up the path with a bright red face and a shiny HOA president badge. She pointed at me like I was a criminal. Behind her, 2 sheriff's deputies stepped forward, their boots crunching on gravel. She accused me of trespassing, claiming I was illegally occupying HOA property, and insisted I be arrested. One of the deputies, Martinez, pulled out his tablet and began tapping through public records. A silence hung over us until his posture suddenly changed. He looked at his partner, then back at Karen. "Ma'am," he said, eyebrows raised. "This man owns not just this cabin, but the entire parcel of land your HOA sits on." Her face paled. 3 weeks earlier, I had returned to Pine Ridge County after years of managing real estate projects overseas. This lakeside cabin had always been home to me, a peaceful retreat where my grandfather taught me patience and my father taught me respect for nature. But in my absence, the area had been reshaped beyond recognition. Instead of scattered cottages and untamed woods, there were luxury properties and landscaped lawns. And the HOA, well, it had sprung up like ivy, creeping over everything. I met Karen on my second day back. I was fixing the dock when she appeared, clipboard in hand and blazer sharp as ever. Without even a greeting, she launched into a list of violations my cabin was supposedly guilty of, from the natural wood siding to the non-compliant wildflowers in the yard. I explained that my property had been here long before any HOA was dreamed up, but she brushed me off and told me I had 30 days to comply or face legal action. I smiled and wished her luck. By the next morning, she was already digging into my history. Ted Brennan, a neighbor from the old days, stopped by and gave me a heads up. Karen had called a special HOA meeting to talk about me. She'd shown off a PowerPoint of my violations, complete with drone footage and exaggerated claims, like my solar panels reflecting hazardous light levels into nearby homes. Ted laughed about it, saying her own readings showed less glare than the lake itself. Things escalated quickly. Citation after citation began arriving at my door. Overgrown grass, mailbox color, bird feeders. She hired security to sit in cars near my property and snap photos of anyone who visited. The letters became more aggressive. Threats of daily fines, formal complaints, and even discussions at HOA meetings branding me a nuisance. Still, I stayed calm. I filed her notices into a folder labeled entertainment and kept living my life. Coffee on the porch in the morning, fishing in the evenings. The tension reached its peak one Thursday afternoon. I was installing new solar panels when Karen showed up again, this time with her nephew, whom she'd apparently appointed as the HOA's enforcement officer. She demanded I stop my unauthorized construction immediately. When I didn't, she theatrically called the police, describing a hostile individual refusing to leave private HOA land. 20 minutes later, law enforcement arrived. Karen met them in the driveway, talking fast and waving her binder of evidence. Martinez, calm as ever, came over and asked me if I owned the property. I told him I did. Karen jumped in, insisting that the HOA controlled all lakefront areas. That's when Martinez double-checked the county database. What followed was almost cinematic. Karen's posture slumped as he read the results aloud. I didn't just own the cabin. I owned the surrounding land. And not just a sliver either. Through my company, Blackstone Land Holdings, I held the deed to the entire 300-acre tract, including the very ground her precious HOA stood on. The lake and all the land beneath every home in the Pine Ridge Estates neighborhood had a hidden truth. While the development company that built the community had secured the surface rights for the residential lots, they never purchased the actual land beneath them. That land had belonged to my grandfather since 1962 and had remained in our family trust ever since. When this came to light, Karen, the self-important head of the HOA, began to visibly unravel. Her hands shook, her clipboard slipped from her fingers, and she muttered something about needing to consult with legal counsel. But Officer Martinez, who had been calmly reviewing the documents, continued explaining that every homeowner in Pine Ridge Estates was technically leasing the land under their houses. A 99-year lease had been signed decades ago with the original developer, an agreement crafted by my grandfather. Martinez made it clear, since I was the rightful owner of the land, the HOA had no legal ground to dictate what I could or couldn't do with my property. In essence, they were renting from me. Karen's complexion shifted from pale to flushed as she absorbed the truth. She looked helplessly at her nephew, who suddenly became fascinated by his shoes. Deputy Chun, Martinez's partner, got on the phone with multiple offices to confirm the facts. One by one, each call backed up the story. The county assessor's office validated the deed, the title company confirmed the chain of ownership, and even the original development records, dug up in a hurry, revealed that the neighborhood had been built under a land lease structure that had somehow disappeared from the HOA's records. Karen's voice trembled when she asked how this could be possible. Martinez patiently explained that the HOA had been functioning for over 15 years without realizing they didn't own the land they were claiming jurisdiction over. By midday, the news swept across Pine Ridge Estates like a wildfire. Emergency board meetings were scheduled. Attorneys were contacted. Residents discovered fine print in their deeds. Terms of a lease, not outright ownership. Karen tried to regain control, insisting that there had to be a misunderstanding. But the documents were ironclad. By nightfall, her stance had shifted from authoritarian demands to desperate bargaining. She wanted to work something out, anything that might preserve property values or salvage the HOA's role. But it was too late. My legal team promptly filed to stop all HOA interference on my land and demanded a full audit of their financial activities. That audit uncovered far worse than simple incompetence. Karen had not just been ignorant of the law, she had manipulated it. She had filed fraudulent documents to falsely assert HOA ownership of the lakefront, trying to bolster her authority. Over $70,000 in HOA dues had been diverted to fund her personal getaways, masked as expenses for lake maintenance that I, as the true landowner, was actually responsible for. The financial review unearthed a trail of fraud going back 3 years. And it didn't end there. Karen had built an entire network of scams. She created fake vendors, approved payments for fake services, and funneled HOA funds into those sham accounts. Her husband's landscaping company had been grossly overpaid for basic work. She even sold access rights to a boat tour operator, something she had no legal power to do, and kept the $30,000 fee for herself. When confronted, some board members confessed they had suspected wrongdoing but had stayed quiet out of fear. One former treasurer admitted that when she raised questions about the budget, Karen threatened to report her house as unsafe to the county. Eventually, the community held a special meeting in the very center Karen once ruled over like a queen. Over 200 residents packed into the hall, many demanding explanations. The vote to remove Karen was unanimous. She stood motionless at the front as the results were read, her carefully crafted illusion collapsing before her eyes. Someone shouted for her to return the stolen money. Others called for her arrest. Her nephew quietly slipped out the back, abandoning his badge on a chair. 2 weeks later, the district attorney pressed formal charges: fraud, embezzlement, falsifying public records, and filing false reports with law enforcement. Her mugshot told the full story: hair a mess, designer outfit replaced by a standard-issue jumpsuit. 6 months later at her sentencing, the judge didn't hold back. He described her as someone who had knowingly taken advantage of her neighbor's trust. She received a 4-year prison term, was ordered to repay every cent, and faced an additional $200,000 in fines. As she was handcuffed and led away, Karen tried once more to protest, claiming some mistake had been made. The gavel came down hard, sealing her fate. Her husband filed for divorce that same day, revealing in court that she had hidden assets overseas and forged his signature on multiple documents. Her real estate license was revoked permanently, ending her long career at Platinum Realty Group. State authorities opened additional investigations into her previous HOA roles in 3 other neighborhoods, all showing signs of similar financial manipulation. As the prison van rolled away, Karen pressed her face to the glass, silently mouthing words no one could hear, staring out at the now empty lot where her imaginary empire had finally crumbled.